The trial marked the end of one chapter in Naomi's life, but it was far from the conclusion of her journey. As the days turned into weeks following Daniel's conviction, she found herself navigating uncharted territory, a world where she was no longer defined by fear or someone else's expectations. For the first time in years, she woke up each morning without dreading what might happen next. The weight that had pressed down on her chest for so long began to lift, replaced by a fragile yet growing sense of freedom. But healing wasn't easy. The scars, both visible and invisible, remained, reminders of the battles she had fought and survived. She attended therapy sessions regularly, working through the trauma with the help of a compassionate counselor who encouraged her to confront her pain rather than bury it. These sessions weren't always comfortable. Some days she left feeling drained and raw. But over time, they gave her tools to rebuild her confidence, rediscover her identity, and reclaim the parts of herself she thought were lost forever. Naomi also leaned heavily on the support of those who truly cared about her. Sarah remained, a steadfast ally, checking in daily and ensuring Naomi never felt alone. Together they spent afternoons laughing over coffee, taking long walks, and talking about everything under the sun except the past. It was during these moments that Naomi realized how much joy she had missed while living in fear. Slowly but surely, she started allowing herself to dream again, to imagine a future filled with possibilities instead of limitations. Her story didn't just impact her own life, it resonated deeply within the community. The revelation of Daniel's true nature forced many people to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves and their surroundings. Some congregants initially struggled to reconcile the man they admired with the abuser he had become. Over time, however, conversations began to shift. Parishioners started questioning the culture of silence and submission that had allowed such abuse to fester unchecked. They acknowledged the harm caused not only by Daniel's actions but also by their failure to recognize the warning signs earlier. In response to this awakening, Naomi decided to channel her experiences into something meaningful. With the encouragement of her counselor and close friends, she founded an organization dedicated to supporting survivors of domestic violence. Named Hope Reclaimed, the nonprofit aimed to provide resources, counseling, and safe spaces for women and families affected by abuse. Through workshops, awareness campaigns, and partnerships with local shelters, Naomi worked tirelessly to ensure no one would have to endure what she had gone through alone. Word of Hope Reclaimed spread quickly, drawing attention beyond the town's borders. Media outlets picked up on Naomi's story, highlighting her resilience and determination to create change. She became a voice for countless others who had been silenced by shame or fear. Speaking engagements followed, where Naomi shared her journey openly, urging audiences to break the cycle of abuse and stand up for those unable to speak for themselves. One particularly memorable event took place at a regional conference focused on women's empowerment. Standing before hundreds of attendees, Naomi recounted her darkest moments, not to elicit sympathy, but to inspire action. "I used to believe I deserved the pain I endured," she said, her voice steady despite the emotion behind her words. "But I've learned that no one deserves to live in fear. No one deserves to be controlled, manipulated, or hurt by someone who claims to love them." Her speech received a standing ovation, cementing her role as an advocate for change. Yet, even as accolades poured in, Naomi remained humble, emphasizing that her work was never about personal recognition. It was about honoring the courage of survivors everywhere and ensuring they knew they weren't alone. Back home, the ripple effects of her efforts continued to transform the community. Churches across the area began hosting seminars on healthy relationships and consent, inviting experts to educate members about the warning signs of abuse. Leaders who once prioritized appearances over accountability now emphasized transparency and compassion. While progress was slow, it was undeniable, a testament to the power of truth and vulnerability. For Naomi, the most profound change came within herself. She learned to forgive, not because Daniel deserved it, but because holding on to bitterness was poisoning her soul. Forgiveness didn't mean excusing his actions or forgetting what he had done. Instead, it meant releasing the anger and hatred that had threatened to consume her. By letting go, she reclaimed her peace and opened herself up to new beginnings. Romance eventually entered her life again, though cautiously. A kind-hearted teacher named Marcus, whom she met through mutual friends, slowly earned her trust. Their relationship developed gradually, built on mutual respect and understanding. Unlike Daniel, Marcus listened when Naomi spoke, supported her dreams, and celebrated her strength. Though she approached love with guarded optimism, Naomi couldn't deny the warmth and happiness Marcus brought into her life. As years passed, Naomi looked back on her journey with a mix of sadness and gratitude. The road had been long and arduous, marked by pain and loss, but it had also led her to places she never imagined, places of purpose, connection, and hope. She often reflected on the woman she had been before meeting Daniel, full of potential, yet unsure of her worth. Today she stood tall, proud of the person she had become, a survivor, a leader, and a beacon of light for others. Though Daniel's imprisonment served as a form of justice, Naomi understood that real healing came from within. It came from choosing to rise above the darkness, from refusing to let anyone define your worth, and from turning pain into purpose. Her legacy wasn't just the organization she built or the speeches she delivered, it was the countless lives she touched simply by sharing her truth. And so, Naomi's story became more than a tale of survival. It was a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable adversity, there is always a chance to rebuild, to grow, and to thrive. It was proof that while scars may remain, they can serve as symbols of strength rather than defeat. Most importantly, it was a call to action, for communities to listen, for individuals to speak out, and for everyone to play a part in creating a safer, kinder world. Naomi's journey ended not with closure, but with renewal. She stepped forward into her future with courage and grace, carrying the lessons of her past like guiding stars. And though challenges undoubtedly lay ahead, she faced them with unwavering faith, not in fate, but in herself. Maria had always prided herself on being thoughtful and caring in her relationships. She believed that small gestures like remembering someone's favorite snack or planning a surprise visit could keep love alive and thriving. Her boyfriend, Alex, was no exception. They had been together for nearly 3 years, and during that time they had shared countless memories, romantic dinners under the stars, cozy movie nights at home, and spontaneous road trips to places neither of them had ever seen before. Their bond was strong, built on mutual respect and affection. But lately something felt different. It wasn't anything obvious, at least not at first. Maria couldn't quite put her finger on it, but she noticed subtle changes creeping into their relationship. Alex seemed distant sometimes, distracted by things he wouldn't explain. His phone buzzed more often than usual, yet when she asked who was calling or texting, he brushed it off with vague answers like, "Just work stuff," or "Some old friends checking in." At first she didn't think much of it. Everyone has moments where life gets busy, right? But then came the family visits. Alex had always spoken fondly of his relatives. He described them as warm, welcoming people who lived out in the countryside. Whenever he mentioned going to see them, his face lit up with nostalgia. However, over the past few months, these visits became frequent and strangely secretive. When Maria suggested joining him, he hesitated, saying things like, "It's not a good time," or "They're just doing boring family stuff you wouldn't enjoy." These excuses puzzled her. Since when did Alex have boring family events? And why did he seem so reluctant to include her? The distance between them grew little by little, almost imperceptibly. Conversations that used to flow effortlessly now felt stilted. There were silences where laughter once filled the air. Maria tried not to overthink it. Maybe Alex was just stressed about work or dealing with something personal. Still deep down, doubt gnawed at her. Was she imagining things? Or was there truly something he wasn't telling her? One evening, while scrolling through social media, absent-mindedly Maria stumbled upon a photo posted by one of Alex's cousins. It showed a group of people gathered around a dinner table at what appeared to be the farmhouse Alex often visited. The caption read, "Family Reunion Weekend." What caught Maria's attention wasn't the picture itself. It was the date. According to the Post, this gathering had happened just 2 weeks ago, on a day when Alex had told her he was working late. A chill ran down her spine. Why would he lie about something so simple? Was he hiding more than just harmless family gatherings? That night, sleep eluded her. She tossed and turned, replaying conversations and piecing together inconsistencies. By morning, she had made up her mind. She needed answers, not accusations, not assumptions, but clarity. If Alex was keeping secrets, she deserved to know why. More importantly, she wanted to remind him how much she cared, how much their relationship meant to her. So she hatched a plan. The next time Alex mentioned visiting his relative's house, Maria acted nonchalantly. "Sounds fun," she said, with a smile, pretending she hadn't thought twice about it. Inside, however, her heart raced. This was her chance to confront whatever was bothering him, and perhaps reignite the spark they'd lost along the way. She decided to surprise him by showing up unannounced. Surely seeing her unexpected arrival would bring joy to his face, and remind him of all the reasons they belonged together. With determination burning in her chest, Maria packed a small bag the following morning. She chose casual clothes, wanting to blend in seamlessly with the rural setting. As she drove toward the countryside, excitement mingled with nervousness. She imagined Alex's reaction, shock turning into delight, followed by laughter and hugs. Maybe they'd spend the afternoon walking through fields, sharing stories and reconnecting. The thought warmed her heart. But as the miles stretched on and the city skyline gave way to rolling hills and endless farmland, another feeling crept in. Apprehension. What if Alex didn't react the way she hoped? What if her surprise wasn't welcome? Pushing those doubts aside, she reminded herself of her intentions. She wasn't coming to accuse or interrogate. She was coming to understand, to bridge whatever gap had formed between them. Finally, after hours of driving, she reached the address Alex had casually mentioned weeks earlier. The farmhouse stood at the end of a long dirt road, its weathered, wooden walls glowing softly in the late afternoon sunlight. Chickens pecked at the ground nearby, and a faint breeze carried the scent of fresh hay. It was picturesque, peaceful, a place where memories were surely made. Taking a deep breath, Maria stepped out of her car, clutching the handle of her bag tightly. Her pulse quickened as she approached the front door. She paused for a moment, rehearsing what she would say. "Surprise," she whispered to herself, forcing a grin. But before she could knock, voices from inside stopped her in her tracks. They weren't cheerful or lighthearted. They were tense, urgent. Something about the tone sent a shiver down her spine. Whatever awaited her beyond that door, she realized, might change everything. Maria stood frozen, her hand hovering midair just inches away from the door. The voices inside were unmistakably tense, their tones sharp and clipped, like the sound of a knife slicing through silence. Her heart pounded in her chest as she strained to listen, curiosity overpowering her initial excitement. She had come here expecting warmth and familiarity, but instead, she felt an unsettling chill creep over her. Something wasn't right. Peering cautiously through the small window next to the door, Maria caught her first glimpse of what was happening inside. The room was cozy yet cluttered, with mismatched furniture and faded curtains that let in slivers of golden sunlight. At the center of it all sat Alex, looking unusually stiff and uncomfortable. Across from him were two older adults, his uncle and aunt, judging by their resemblance to him. Both wore expressions of stern disapproval, their brows furrowed and lips pressed into thin lines. Alex leaned forward slightly, his elbows resting on his knees, while the older man gestured emphatically with his hands. "You can't keep avoiding this," the man said, his voice low but firm. "It's not just about you anymore." His words hung heavy in the air, dripping with unspoken weight. Maria's stomach churned. What did he mean? And why did Alex look so guilty? The woman sitting beside him chimed in, her tone softer but no less serious. "We've tried to shield you, Alex, but this is getting out of hand. You need to face it head on." Her eyes locked onto him, searching for some sign of understanding or resolve. But Alex only stared at the floor, his jaw clenched tightly. For someone who usually exuded confidence, he seemed utterly defeated. Maria couldn't believe what she was seeing. This wasn't the Alex she knew, the easygoing, charming man who could charm anyone with his smile or make her laugh until her sides hurt. This version of him was distant, almost unrecognizable. Who were these people to him really? And what exactly were they discussing? Every instinct told her to knock, to announce her presence and put an end to this strange scene. But something held her back, a mix of fear and fascination. She needed to know more. As she continued to eavesdrop, fragments of their conversation began to paint a troubling picture. The older man mentioned a name, Elena, and the moment it left his lips, Alex visibly flinched. "That was years ago," he muttered, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I've moved on." "Why? Does everyone keep bringing her up?" "Because she hasn't moved on," the man shot back, his voice rising slightly. "And neither has the mess you left behind. Do you think ignoring it will make it disappear?" "Newsflash, Alex, it doesn't work like that." Maria's breath hitched. Elena. Who was she? The name sent a jolt of unease coursing through her veins. It sounded familiar, though she couldn't quite place it. Had Alex ever mentioned her before? She racked her brain, trying to recall any past conversations where this mysterious woman might have come up. Nothing came to mind. Yet, based on the gravity of the discussion unfolding before her, it was clear that Elena played a significant role in Alex's life, perhaps even a painful one. The tension in the room thickened as the woman spoke again. "You owe it to yourself and to us to clean up your mistakes. We're family, Alex. We stick together, but we also hold each other accountable. Running away won't solve anything." Alex sighed deeply, rubbing his temples as if trying to ward off an impending headache. "I didn't run away," he protested weakly. "I made a decision. A hard one, yes, but it was mine to make. I can't change the past." "No, you can't," the man agreed, his tone softening slightly. "But you can stop dodging the consequences. Face them, deal with them, and maybe, just maybe, you'll find some peace." Maria's mind raced as she processed everything she'd heard. Peace, consequences. What kind of trouble had Alex gotten himself into? More importantly, why hadn't he told her about it? The questions swirled in her head like a storm, each one more unsettling than the last. She felt torn between anger and confusion, betrayal and concern. How could he keep something so monumental hidden from her? Her thoughts were interrupted when Alex suddenly stood up, pacing across the room. He looked agitated now, his earlier composure completely shattered. "Fine," he said sharply, throwing his hands up in surrender. "What do you want me to do, huh? Tell me, because clearly you already know best." The older couple exchanged a glance, their expressions unreadable. Finally, the woman spoke, her voice gentle but resolute. "Talk to her, Alex. Hear her out. That's all we're asking." "Hear her out?" Alex repeated incredulously, shaking his head. "After everything she's done? No way. I'm done with this. Done with her." The finality in his tone sent a shiver down Maria's spine. Whoever Elena was, it was obvious that their history was complicated and far from resolved. As much as Maria wanted to step in and demand answers, she realized that barging in now would only make things worse. She needed to approach this carefully, thoughtfully. After all, she hadn't driven hours to cause a scene. She had come to understand. Taking a step back from the window, Maria composed herself. Her heart still raced, but she forced herself to breathe slowly, calming her nerves. She reminded herself why she was here. To reconnect with Alex, to show him how much she cared, and to uncover the truth, not to accuse or judge. With newfound determination, she straightened her posture, smoothed her hair, and prepared to knock on the door. Whatever awaited her inside, she was ready to face it head-on. When she finally rapped her knuckles against the wood, the sound echoed loudly, breaking the tense atmosphere within. Inside, the voices fell silent, replaced by the faint creak of footsteps approaching the door. Maria swallowed hard, bracing herself for what or who might greet her. As the handle turned and the door swung open, Alex appeared before her, his face pale and his eyes wide with shock. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, summoning every ounce of courage she possessed, Maria smiled softly and said, "Hey." Surprise. But despite her cheerful tone, she couldn't ignore the storm brewing behind Alex's startled expression, or the sense that her arrival had disrupted something far bigger than she could have anticipated. The moment Alex opened the door, Maria felt a surge of conflicting emotions. His shocked expression said it all. He hadn't expected her here. Not today. Not ever. For a split second, she saw the flicker of panic in his eyes before he quickly masked it with a forced smile. "Maria?" he stammered, his voice tinged with disbelief. What are you doing here?" "I wanted to surprise you," she replied, trying to keep her tone light despite the tension crackling in the air. She held up the small bag she'd brought as if it were proof of her innocent intentions. "Thought I'd tag along for once. Hope that's okay." Alex hesitated, glancing over his shoulder toward the living room where his relatives still sat. The older man, his uncle, was now standing near the doorway, arms crossed, watching silently. The woman, his aunt, remained seated, but leaned forward slightly, her gaze sharp and assessing. It was clear they weren't buying Maria's cheerful act either. "Of course it's okay," Alex said finally, stepping aside to let her in. His words sounded rehearsed, like he was trying to. Hard to sound casual. "Come on in." As Maria stepped inside, the warmth of the farmhouse did little to ease the chill spreading through her body. She offered a polite smile to Alex's relatives, who nodded stiffly in return. Introductions were brief and awkward, with Alex mumbling their names under his breath as if hoping she wouldn't remember them later. Maria played along, nodding politely even though her mind was racing. She could feel their eyes on her, weighing her presence, judging her every move. Once everyone settled back into the living room, an uncomfortable silence filled the space. Maria perched herself on the edge of a worn armchair, clutching her bag tightly in her lap. Alex sat across from her, fidgeting nervously, while his uncle resumed his position beside him. The tension in the room was palpable, like a storm cloud hovering just above their heads. Maria knew she couldn't sit there pretending everything was fine. She had come for answers, and now was the time to get them. Summoning her courage, she cleared her throat softly and turned to Alex. "So, I couldn't help overhearing some of your conversation earlier," she began, her voice steady despite the butterflies fluttering in her stomach. "Something about Elena?" The name hung in the air like a thunderclap, reverberating through the room. Alex froze, his face draining of color. His uncle sighed heavily, pinching the bridge of his nose as if bracing himself for disaster. Even his aunt looked away, avoiding eye contact altogether. Maria felt a pang of guilt for bringing it up so bluntly, but she reminded herself that honesty was the only way forward. "Who's Elena?" She pressed gently, her eyes locking onto Alex's. "You've never mentioned her before." For a long moment no one spoke. The silence stretched on, heavy and suffocating. Finally, Alex exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "Elena," he started, his voice barely above a whisper. "She's someone from my past. Someone I haven't thought about in years." "Years?" Maria echoed, raising an eyebrow skeptically. "Because it sounds like she's been on your mind lately, or at least on theirs." She gestured subtly toward his relatives, who exchanged uneasy glances. Alex winced, clearly uncomfortable being put on the spot. He glanced at his uncle, then at his aunt, as if seeking guidance or permission. When neither of them intervened, he sighed again, resigning himself to the inevitable. "Okay, fine," he admitted reluctantly. "Elena and we were engaged once, a long time ago." Maria's heart sank. Engaged? The word hit her like a punch to the gut, leaving her momentarily speechless. She stared at him, searching for any sign that this was some kind of cruel joke, but Alex's expression was grim, his shoulders slumped in defeat. He wasn't joking. This was real. "When?" she asked quietly, struggling to keep her voice steady. "Why didn't you tell me?" "It was years before I met you," Alex explained hurriedly, as if desperate to reassure her. "Things ended badly between us. I mean, really badly. I walked away because I realized I wasn't ready for marriage. Not with her, anyway." His explanation only raised more questions. "But why does it still matter?" Maria pressed, her frustration bubbling to the surface. "What's going on with her now?" Alex hesitated, glancing at his relatives again. This time his uncle spoke up, his tone grave. "Elena hasn't exactly moved on," he said bluntly. "She resurfaced recently, threatening to expose some sensitive details about their breakup unless Alex agrees to meet with her." "Expose?" Maria repeated, her brow furrowing in confusion. "What kind of details?" It was Alex's aunt who answered this time, her voice soft but firm. "Details that could embarrass our family," she said carefully, "and possibly damage Alex's reputation." Maria's mind reeled as she pieced everything together. So, this wasn't just about an old relationship gone sour. It was about secrets, threats, and consequences Alex had been carrying alone. No wonder he seemed so distant lately. No wonder he avoided talking about his trips to see his relatives. He wasn't just hiding something. He was protecting himself and maybe her from whatever fallout might come. Still, none of that excused his silence. "You should have told me," Maria said firmly, her voice trembling with emotion. "I'm your partner, Alex. We're supposed to share things like this, not hide them." "I know," Alex replied, his own voice cracking under the weight of guilt. "I wanted to protect you, Maria. From all of it. I didn't want you to worry or think less of me." "Think less of you?" Maria shot back, incredulous. "How could I think less of you when you won't even give me the chance to understand?" "Secrets don't protect people. They push them away." Her words hung in the air, raw and unfiltered. For the first time since she arrived, Alex looked truly remorseful. His defenses crumbled, revealing the vulnerability beneath. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I messed up. I thought I could handle it on my own, but I can't. I need help. I need you." Maria felt her resolve waver. Part of her wanted to lash out, to demand more answers, to punish him for keeping such a monumental secret. But another part of her, the part that loved him, recognized the pain in his voice. He wasn't perfect, and neither was she. Relationships weren't built on perfection. They were built on trust, communication, and forgiveness. Taking a deep breath, Maria leaned forward, her gaze softening. "We'll figure this out together," she said quietly. "But you have to promise me one thing: you won't shut me out again. No more secrets, Alex. Deal?" Alex nodded fervently, relief washing over his face. "Deal," he promised, reaching for her hand. Their fingers intertwined, a silent vow passing between them. As the tension in the room slowly dissipated, Maria glanced around at Alex's relatives, who watched the exchange with guarded expressions. They didn't say much, but their approval was evident in the slight nods and relieved smiles they exchanged. For better or worse, she realized, this wasn't just Alex's burden anymore. It was hers too. And together they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The room seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief as Maria and Alex's conversation shifted from confrontation to understanding. While the tension hadn't completely disappeared, it had softened, like the first rays of sunlight breaking through a stormy sky. Maria could feel her own emotions settling into something more manageable, anger giving way to curiosity, frustration melting into determination. She knew this wasn't the end of the story. There were still pieces missing, gaps in Alex's explanation that needed filling. But for now, she felt grounded enough to keep going. Turning back to Alex's relatives, Maria decided to take control of the situation. "Okay," she said, her tone calm but firm. "Let's start from the beginning. Who is Elena, really? And why is she threatening Alex now after all these years?" Alex's uncle leaned forward slightly, his arms resting on his knees. His expression was serious but not unkind. Elena was, well, she was family in a way, he began, choosing his words carefully. Not by blood, but by connection. When Alex got engaged to her, we welcomed her into our lives. She became part of us, for a while. But things changed. Alex interjected, his voice quieter but steady. He glanced at Maria briefly before continuing. At first, everything seemed perfect. We were young, excited about the future. But over time, I started noticing cracks in our relationship. Elena wanted things I wasn't ready for. A big wedding, kids right away, a life mapped out down to the smallest detail. I loved her, but I realized I wasn't the person she thought I was. I couldn't give her what she needed. Maria listened intently, her heart aching for both Alex and the woman he described. It sounded painful, not just for him, but for Elena too. Breaking off an engagement wasn't easy under any circumstances, but doing so when expectations ran so high must have been devastating for everyone involved. And then, Maria prompted gently, encouraging him to go on. Alex hesitated, his gaze dropping to the floor. I ended things, he admitted, his voice heavy with regret. But I didn't handle it well. I left without explaining myself properly. I thought it was better that way, to make a clean break, but looking back I see how selfish that was. Elena didn't deserve that kind of treatment. His aunt nodded solemnly, picking up where Alex left off. After the breakup, Elena struggled. She felt humiliated, betrayed. Word spread around town and people talked. You know how small communities are. Everyone knows everyone else's business. It wasn't fair to her, but that's the way it went. Maria frowned, piecing together the timeline. So what happened next? Why did she disappear only to come back now? That's the complicated part, Alex's uncle said, rubbing his temples as if the weight of the story was physically exhausting. For years, we heard nothing from her. We assumed she'd moved on, started a new life somewhere else. But recently, she reached out to Alex, claiming she has evidence of, let's say, some messy details from their past. Things that could embarrass the family if they came to light. What kind of details? Maria asked, her curiosity piqued. She hated being kept in the dark, especially when it directly affected the man she loved. Alex shifted uncomfortably, clearly reluctant to elaborate. It's personal, he muttered, avoiding her gaze. Stuff I'm not proud of, mistakes I made during our relationship, stuff I wish I could take back. Maria pressed her lips together, resisting the urge to push further. She understood that some wounds were too raw to discuss openly, even in front of others. Instead, she focused on the bigger picture. And now she's using those details. Against you? She clarified. Yes, Alex confirmed, his voice barely audible. She says she'll expose everything unless I meet with her, talk to her, settle things once and for all. Maria's mind raced as she processed this new information. Blackmail was a harsh word, but it fit the situation perfectly. Elena wasn't just seeking closure. She was wielding her knowledge like a weapon, forcing Alex back into a chapter of his life he'd tried so hard to leave behind. The question was, why? Was it revenge, desperation, or something else entirely? You haven't met with her yet? Maria asked, glancing at Alex. No, he replied quickly. I don't want to. Every instinct tells me it's a bad idea. But my family thinks I should hear her out, at least try to resolve things peacefully. Maria turned to his relatives, her brow furrowing. Do you think that's wise? Meeting with someone who's already shown hostility doesn't sound safe. His uncle sighed deeply, leaning back in his chair. We're not saying it's risk-free, but running away won't solve anything either. If Alex ignores her demands, she might follow through on her threats. At least talking gives him a chance to diffuse the situation. Maria mulled this over, weighing the pros and cons. On one hand, confronting Elena could escalate tensions or reveal secrets Alex wasn't prepared to face. On the other hand, ignoring her might lead to consequences neither of them could predict. It was a lose-lose scenario, but staying silent felt like the greater risk. Finally, Maria looked at Alex, her expression resolute. "If you decide to meet with her, I'm coming with you," she declared firmly. "You're not facing this alone." Alex blinked in surprise, clearly caught off guard by her declaration. "Maria, no, this isn't your fight. I don't want to drag you into it." "It is my fight," she countered, her voice softening but unwavering, "because it affects you and us. Whether you like it or not, I'm here now. We're in this together." Her words hung in the air, leaving no room for argument. Alex stared at her for a moment, then slowly nodded, gratitude shining in his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. His relatives exchanged approving glances, clearly relieved to see Maria standing by Alex's side. For the first time since she arrived, the atmosphere in the room felt less hostile, more united. They weren't just dealing with a family issue anymore. They were a team, working toward a solution. As the evening wore on, the group discussed possible strategies for handling Elena. Maria suggested documenting everything, texts, emails, any communication she initiated, as proof in case things escalated legally. Alex's uncle agreed, adding that they should consult a lawyer just to be safe. His aunt chimed in with practical advice about setting boundaries during their meeting, emphasizing the importance of staying calm and composed. By the time night fell, Maria felt drained but oddly hopeful. They hadn't solved the problem yet, but they had laid the groundwork for moving forward. Secrets had been exposed, fears confronted, and alliances formed. Whatever lay ahead, she knew one thing for certain. Alex wasn't alone anymore. Neither was she. Together, they would navigate the storm and hopefully emerge stronger on the other side. The next morning dawned with a heaviness that lingered in the air, like the aftermath of a storm that had yet to fully pass. Maria woke up early, her mind buzzing with thoughts of everything she'd learned the day before. The farmhouse was quiet, save for the occasional creak of floorboards as Alex's relatives moved about their morning routines. She sat at the kitchen table, sipping a cup of coffee while staring out the window at the golden fields stretching endlessly toward the horizon. It was beautiful, serene, but Maria couldn't shake the feeling that beneath this peaceful surface lay a tangled web of secrets and unresolved pain. Alex joined her shortly after, his usual confident demeanor replaced by a quiet vulnerability. He poured himself a cup of coffee and slid into the chair across from her, his hands wrapped tightly around the mug as if seeking warmth or comfort. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them wasn't awkward, but it was heavy, laden with unspoken fears and lingering questions. Finally, Maria broke the quiet. "Are you ready for this?" she asked softly, her eyes meeting his. "Meeting Elena, I mean." Alex sighed deeply, his shoulders sagging under the weight of her question. "I don't know if anyone can ever be ready for something like this," he admitted. "But, yes, I think so. Or at least I have to be." Maria nodded, reaching across the table to place a reassuring hand over his. "You're not alone," she reminded him gently. "We'll face it together step by step." Her words seemed to bolster him slightly. He managed a small, grateful smile before taking another sip of coffee. They spent the next hour going over the plan again, double-checking every detail. Alex's uncle had arranged for the meeting to take place at a neutral location, a quiet cafe in town where they could talk without interruptions. A lawyer would be on standby, just in case things took an unexpected turn. And Maria would stay by Alex's side throughout, acting as both moral support and a witness to whatever transpired. By mid-morning, they were ready. The drive to town was tense but focused, each of them lost in their own thoughts. Maria gripped the steering wheel tightly, rehearsing what she might say if Elena became confrontational. Alex stared out the passenger side window, his jaw clenched as he mentally prepared himself for the encounter ahead. When they finally arrived at the cafe, its quaint exterior offered little reassurance. To Maria, it felt more like stepping into a battlefield than a cozy spot for conversation. Elena was already there, seated at a corner table with a steaming cup of tea in front of her. She looked different from how Maria had imagined. Softer, almost fragile, with delicate features, framed by dark hair pulled back into a loose bun. Her expression was calm, almost serene, but there was a sharpness in her eyes that betrayed the steel beneath her composed exterior. As they approached the table, Elena stood up, offering a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Alex," she said evenly, her voice smooth but tinged with an edge Maria couldn't quite place. "And this is Maria," Alex introduced, his tone cautious. "She's my partner." Elena's gaze flickered briefly to Maria, assessing her with a single glance before nodding curtly. "Nice to meet you," she said, though her tone suggested otherwise. She gestured for them to sit, and they did, the 4 chairs forming an uneasy circle around the small table. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence stretched taut, broken only by the faint hum of background chatter from other patrons. Finally, Elena leaned forward slightly, resting her elbows on the table. "I assume you know why we're here," she began, her voice steady, but laced with accusation. "You left me, Alex. Without explanation, without closure. Do you have any idea what that did to me?" Alex flinched visibly, guilt flashing across his face. "I know I hurt you," he replied quietly. "And I'm sorry truly, but I thought cutting ties was the best thing for both of us. I wasn't ready for marriage, not with you, not with anyone. Staying would have been worse." "Worse for whom?" Elena shot back sharply, her composure cracking slightly. "Because it sure as hell wasn't better for me. You disappeared, Alex, left me to deal with the whispers, the judgment, the shame. People treated me like I was damaged goods because of you." Maria watched the exchange closely, her heart aching for both of them. This wasn't just about anger or blame. It was about pain, raw and unhealed. Elena's words carried the weight of years spent nursing wounds Alex hadn't even realized he'd inflicted. "I never meant to hurt you," Alex insisted, his voice trembling with emotion. "I made mistakes. I won't deny that. But holding onto this bitterness isn't helping either of us move forward." "And what do you suggest I do instead?" Elena demanded, her voice rising slightly. "Forget everything? Pretend it never happened?" "No," Alex said firmly, surprising even himself with his resolve. "But threatening me, trying to expose my past, that's not moving forward. That's dragging us both back into the mess we tried to escape." Elena stared at him, her chest rising and falling with each labored breath. For a moment, Maria thought she might lash out, escalate the confrontation further. But then, unexpectedly, Elena's shoulders slumped, and she let out a shaky sigh. "Maybe you're right," she murmured, her voice softer now. "Maybe I've been clinging to this anger for too long. It hasn't brought me peace, it's only made me bitter." Maria seized the opening, leaning forward slightly. "Elena," she said gently, her tone measured but kind. "I can't imagine what you've been through, and I'm not here to dismiss your feelings. But holding on to this pain, it's hurting you more than it's hurting anyone else. Isn't it time to let go?" Elena glanced at Maria, surprise flickering in her eyes. For a moment it seemed like she might argue, but instead, she looked down at her hands, fidgeting nervously with the handle of her teacup. "Letting go sounds easy when you say it," she admitted quietly. "But it's not. Not when every memory feels like a scar. No one expects you to forget," Maria continued, her voice warm and empathetic. "But maybe forgiveness of yourself, of Alex, could be the first step toward healing. Holding on to resentment keeps you tied to the past. Letting go gives you a chance to start fresh." Elena was silent for a long moment, her gaze distant as if she were considering Maria's words. Finally, she nodded slowly, tears glistening in her eyes. "You're probably right," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I needed someone to hear me, to acknowledge that I mattered." "You did matter," Alex said earnestly, his own voice thick with emotion. "And you still do. I wish I'd handled things differently back then." If I could change anything, I would. Elena smiled faintly, a bittersweet expression that hinted at acceptance rather than happiness. Thank you, she said simply, glancing between Alex and Maria. For listening, for being honest. Maybe this is the closure I've been looking for all along. With that, the tension in the room began to dissipate, like clouds parting after a storm. They talked for a little while longer, exchanging apologies and tentative hopes for the future. By the time they parted ways, there was no handshake or hug, just a shared understanding that some wounds might never fully heal, but they could begin to fade with time. As Maria and Alex walked back to the car, the weight on their shoulders felt lighter, though not entirely gone. That wasn't easy, Alex admitted, exhaling deeply. But I think we did the right thing. We did, Maria agreed, squeezing his hand reassuringly. And now we can focus on us, on building something stronger, together. For the A. First time in days, Alex smiled genuinely, hope flickering in his eyes. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them side by side,